making today on the channel. Today we are winterizing my wardrobe and making an 18th century Canada cap. The most common depictions we have of people wearing this hat are in basically the British military stationed in Canada in the late 18th century or so. Just because we have a strong kind of military background with this hat doesn't necessarily mean the military was the only people that used it. I'm obviously kind of going at it from a civilian angle. It's a project I've been looking forward to for a while. A couple winters ago, I made an 18th century cape loosely based off of the one from the Costume Close-Up book. And I had I had a very small amount of red wool fabric left, basically enough to make either possibly a pair of gloves or possibly a hat. And I wanted to do the Canada cap, of course, because it has those Canadian roots in fashion and textile history. So from there, all I needed was to get the fur to do the lining. I'm looking forward to this project because I've never worked with fur before, and I'm going to be sewing the whole thing by hand. So kind of some new skills, some new techniques that I'll be learning, which is always great to kind of push yourself on a project. But I'm also really excited to have a matching winter set and something for cold weather. That's obviously a major part of Canada's history, Canada's present. Culture is dealing with winter and the cold. Not to push on stereotypes or anything, but historical costuming is so often limited to the summer months, and especially when you live in a colder climate, having stuff that's appropriate for winter extends the longevity of your wardrobe, and especially if you're working at a living history site or a museum that does winter events, having something that's going to keep you warm and that's era appropriate is really key. So having this sort of cape and hat set, I think, is just gonna look super cute, and it has some of that sort of Canadian history looped into it. So here it goes. Let's go make it. I went to a local Indigenous craft store and purchased 4 rabbit furs. I wanted to discuss my approach to this really briefly because I know a lot of people have different opinions about using fur. I'm of the mind that I would rather buy natural fibers that are sustainably sourced from an Indigenous business if possible, so using natural fur, ethically and sustainably sourced, is not a problem for me. In the long run, using natural fur is better for the environment as well. So to me, that is what I would always pick over a synthetic fur. But fur is really expensive. I don't see myself making projects with fur very much in the future anyway. I ended up having more scraps than I thought, which means I might have more to make another project from it, we'll see. I first had to determine if my cap panel pieces would fit on the piece of fabric that I have, and if I had to do any piecing, which thankfully I didn't have to do for this project. After tracing out the pattern pieces onto the wool, I just cut them out with sewing shears. You end up with 4 pointed oblong shapes that will make up the outside of the hat. Then I got my fur. I wanted to make sure the direction of the fur was going the right way before flipping it over and tracing the pattern shape onto the skin side of the pelt. I had seen warnings online about when you cut fur, make sure to cut shallowly through the skin. If you use scissors or cut too deep, you end up cutting the fur, making the edges a bit patchy, and keep in mind this will shed a lot during the process. Out of the 4 fur panels, I did them all with an X-Acto knife, but there were some parts that I purposely went deep so that I could see for myself how that ended up looking and identify how it felt so I wouldn't do it for the rest of the pieces. Once all the pieces are cut, you have 4 fur lining pieces and 4 wool outer pieces. Next, I pinned the edges according to the seam allowance and hand sewed it with a running stitch. Hand sewing the wool wasn't bad, but the fur was a lot harder on the fingers, and you can just do it with a regular hand sewing needle. Just be aware that it'll be a little trickier. Once all the pieces were assembled, I popped it inside out into the hat to sew around the edges. You have to leave a bit of a gap so you can flip everything out so it faces the right way. This was a little tricky and I was worried about ripping all of my stitching out, but it ended up being fine with some gentle persuasion. So you end up with a fully lined hat and a little bit of this gap. All you have to do is hand sew it together and you're done the body of the hat. I made a pom-pom out of fur and sewed it to the top, and the Canada cap was complete.